Imagine for a second the perfect Christmas. Close your eyes. You probably see snow falling gently on a roof, a crackling fireplace, a fir tree decorated with warm lights, and of course, the central scene, a manger in Bethlehem. We see the baby Jesus, newborn, wrapped in swaddling clothes, while Jose and Maria shiver in the cold on that freezing night of December 25th, year zero. It is a beautiful, comforting image that we have seen on millions of postcards. Well, I have bad news for you all, and forgive me if I ruin your childhood in the first 30 seconds of this video, but none of that happened like that. In fact, Christmas, as you know it, is probably the marketing campaign most successful, longest, and most brazen in the history of humanity. And no, I'm not referring to Coca-Cola inventing Santa Claus. I'm referring to a political and religious conspiracy from 1700 years ago that literally hijacked the calendar forever. Let's start with the basics, with the book that is supposed to tell the story, the Bible. If you are curious and open the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verse 8, you will find a detail that goes unnoticed by most, but for historians is a smoking gun. The text explicitly states that at the time of the birth, there were shepherds in the same region who were keeping watch over their flock by night. Read it carefully. Shepherds sleeping out in the open, in the fields, watching sheep at night. Here is where geography gives us a slap of reality. Bethlehem, in Judea, has a pretty harsh climate in winter. In December, temperatures plummet, rains are constant, and it even snows. No shepherd in his right mind would have his sheep sleeping outside in December. Flocks were kept indoors from mid-October to protect them from the cold. If the shepherds were outside, that means, without any shadow of a doubt, that Jesus was born in spring, or, at most, in early autumn. So, if the Bible itself gives us very clear clues that the protagonist's birthday was not in winter, why on earth have we spent almost 2 millennia eating nougat and freezing on December 25th? Was it a miscalculation? A confusion of dates? No, it was something much smarter. It was a theft. To understand what happened, we have to rewind the tape and travel to a time when Christmas didn't even exist. And when I say it didn't exist, I mean literally. During the first 300 years of Christianity, nobody cared when Jesus was born. Moreover, celebrating birthdays was considered a pagan custom, something vulgar that pharaohs or sinners like Herod did. A famous theologian of the time, Origen, even wrote texts mocking the idea of celebrating the birth of Christ as if he were an earthly king. For early Christians, the only important date was Easter, the death and resurrection. The birth was irrelevant. So there we have the scenario, a Christian calendar with a huge hole in December. And as you know, in history and politics, power vacuums are always filled. While Christians ignored winter, their Roman neighbors, oh friends, the Romans knew how to throw a party, and December was their month. It wasn't a month of silence and prayer. It was the month of absolute chaos, anarchy, and unbridled pleasure. If you think your office parties get out of hand, wait until you meet Saturnalia. Saturnalia was celebrated from December 17th to 23rd in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture. And it wasn't just any party, it was the event of the year. During that week, Rome went completely crazy. Courts, schools, and businesses were closed. It was forbidden to declare war or execute criminals. And the wildest part? The social order was completely inverted. Imagine this. For a few days, slaves dressed in their master's clothes, they sat at the table and were served by the owners of the house themselves. A king of Saturnalia was chosen, a leader of mockery who gave absurd orders that everyone had to obey. It was a kind of the purge, but with excessive banquets, illegal gambling games that were suddenly allowed, and a shout that echoed through all the streets of the empire. Io, Saturnalia! People gave each other wax candles, clay figurines, and enjoyed the freedom of not being judged. But Saturnalia was just the appetizer. The main course, the true final boss that Christianity would face, arrived right after, on December 25th. And this is where astronomy comes in. In the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice occurs around December 21st or 22nd. It is the shortest day of the year, the longest and darkest night. For the ancients, this was terrifying. They saw how the sun, the source of life, was getting weaker and weaker. But around December 25th, the first change was noticed. The days began to lengthen. The sun was reborn, and Rome was not going to let this pass. In the year 274 AD, the Emperor Aurelian, a tough guy who needed to unify an empire that was falling apart, decided to make the cult of Sol Invictus official. He declared December 25th as the Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, the birthday of the unconquered sun. Imagine the scene: golden temples shining, massive sacrifices, and the whole empire worshipping the Sun King who was returning to save them from the cold. It was the trendy religion, the direct competition, the cool cult of the moment. Aurelian understood that a single god, visible and powerful in the sky, could unite all the legions. Now put yourself in the shoes of a Christian bishop from the 3rd century. You have a serious public relations problem. Your religion is austere and persecuted at times. Meanwhile, your pagan neighbors have the best party in history in December. Free food, gifts, and a spectacular sun god. The faithful Christians, who after all were human, looked askance at those parties with envy. Many practiced double militancy. They went to Mass in the morning and then went to Saturnalia in the afternoon. Christianity ran the real risk of being eclipsed by the brightness of the unconquered sun. The Church realized it could not ban pagan Christmas. Trying to cancel Saturnalia would have caused riots. It would have been political suicide. So, the ecclesiastical hierarchy had a brilliant idea, one of those Machiavellian ideas that changed the course of history. They looked at each other and said, if you can't beat them, join them. Or better yet, make it look like you're joining, but change the script from the inside. It was a spiritual rebranding operation. They needed a date for the birth of Jesus, and December 25th was free on their calendar, but extremely busy on the streets of Rome. The logic was overwhelming. Do pagans celebrate the birth of the physical sun that conquers darkness? Perfect. We will say that on that day the true sun is born, the sun of justice, the light of the world. They used the same symbolism, the same language of light versus darkness, but changed the protagonist. It was like changing a computer's operating system without changing the case. People could keep celebrating December 25th. They could keep having banquets, but now, officially, it was no longer for the Sun King, but for the King of Kings. The change was not immediate. There were debates, false calculations, and convoluted theological justifications to try to square that Jesus was born on December 25th, although everyone knew the scriptures said otherwise. There were internal tensions and heated discussions in councils. But the machinery was already in motion. Rome, with its usual pragmatism, was about to transform the wildest pagan party into the most sacred celebration of Christianity. And here is where the story gets really interesting, because they didn't just steal the date. They absorbed everything. The tree? Pagan. The gifts? Pagan. The mistletoe? Druidic. The Christian Church performed the greatest act of cultural recycling in history. But the masterstroke, the final decree that would seal this pact between heaven and politics, and which explains why today you have dinner on the 24th and not the 25th, was about to be signed. And that signature came officially in the year 336. It was at that moment that the key date appeared for the first time in a Western calendar. December 25th, Natus Christus in Bethlehem, Judea. It was a decree, an administrative footnote that changed the rhythm of the world. But Constantino and Papa Julio were not fools. They knew that for people to swallow the change, they had to keep the fun. That's why Christmas kept the DNA of Saturnalia: the banquets, the alcohol, the lights, and the idea of giving gifts. Basically, they changed the label on the package, but left the content that people liked. But wait, because I know what you've been wondering since the beginning of the video. If the goal was to cover up the party on the 25th, why do we celebrate the big dinner, the gifts, and the party on the 24th at night? Why is Christmas Eve almost more important than Christmas Day itself in our Hispanic culture? The answer is fascinating and has to do with how we measure time. Today, for us, the day starts at midnight, when the clock strikes 00. But for ancient Jews and early Christians, the system was different. They inherited the vision of Genesis, and there was evening and there was morning, one day. For them, the day did not start at dawn or midnight, but at sunset of the previous day. The moment the sun set and the first star appeared, it was liturgically the next day. That's why Christmas doesn't start on the morning of the 25th. It starts as soon as it gets dark on the 24th. That eve is the magical moment of transition. It is Christmas Eve because it is the night when the darkness of winter is broken for the first time. That dinner you have on the 24th is not a preview. Historically, it is the actual start of the party. It is the exact moment when the ancient Romans lit torches to help the sun be reborn, and the moment when Christians lit candles to receive the sun of justice. It is a tradition of vigil, of waiting awake for the light to conquer the darkness. And speaking of traditions that are not what they seem, look at your living room. You have a tree, right? A fir or a pine, green, full of baubles. What does a Nordic pine have to do with the birth of a child in the Judean desert? Absolutely nothing. Here is where the last guest enters this cultural fusion party: the peoples of Northern Europe. Long after Rome fell, the Church tried to convert the Germanic and Scandinavian tribes, and they encountered the same problem as with the Romans. These Vikings and barbarians had their own winter festival, Yule. At Yule, they celebrated the solstice by worshipping evergreen trees, the only ones that didn't die in winter. They believed that spirits and gods lived in them. They decorated their houses with holly and green branches to protect themselves from evil spirits and celebrate life amidst the snow. The Church, once again, applied its old master tactic. Don't ban it, baptize it. Saint Boniface, according to legend, cut down Thor's tree, an oak sacred to pagans, and pointed to a small fir tree that was behind it, saying that this would be their new symbol. Its evergreen leaves represented the eternal life of Christ, and its triangular shape pointed to the sky, to the Trinity. Thus, the wild Yule was tamed and entered our living rooms. That tree you decorate is not biblical. It is an echo of the frozen forests of Scandinavia and rituals that are thousands of years old. So, is Christmas a lie? Is it all a commercial and political fraud? Well, it depends on how you look at it. If you look for historical accuracy, scientific rigor, and an exact date on the calendar, yes, Christmas is an artificial construction, a puzzle made with pieces from Rome, Judea, and the Nordic forests. But if you think about it, maybe that makes it even more special. Humanity, since we lived in caves, has dreaded darkness and cold. We have always needed, in the darkest moment of the year, to come together, light a fire, eat too much, and remind each other that the light will return, that the sun has not died, that spring will come. What the Christians did was not just steal a date, was to understand that deep human need and give it a new name. Whether you celebrate the birth of the unconquered Son, the birth of Jesus, or simply that you have holidays, what we celebrate at heart is the same: the victory of hope over fear, of light over darkness. And it doesn't matter if it was in spring or winter, or if it is the 24th or 25th. The important thing is that for one night a year, we decide to stop the world, look each other in the face, and tell each other that everything is going to be okay. So, the next time you make a toast on Christmas Eve, remember, You are participating in the oldest ritual of humanity, disguised with the most successful marketing in history. Happy Saturnalia, I mean, Merry Christmas.